Hello, everyone. So it's 3:35 on the East Coast here, which means our 30 minutes has begun. And I imagine that there might be a couple more people trickling in, depending on if another session went over or people needed a longer bio break or something like that. So I guess if you wanted to share your screen, Jennifer, you could
Yeah,
start.
sure.
And
Sure. 1 second.
so this session is being recorded also. So sometimes people, value watching the playback of it later, right? If they had a competing session.
Yeah, that's what's so nice about it being online, right? You get that option.
Yes.
Really nice.
And so just to frame, most people know since it's the second round, but it's supposed to be around 15 minutes of concrete share of a tool and then 15 minutes of a conversation or questions. Obviously the smaller group, the more flexibility that we have. And don't forget the bingo cards, because as you hear concrete ideas, you can add them to the bingo card and win some books. So,
All right.
let me know if you need me. I'll be here.
All right. Sounds good. So nice and cozy today. That's okay. And hopefully this will be reviewed again by others when it's a recording. So good afternoon. 1 second. Whoops. So good afternoon. This webinar will provide an orientation to the New Jersey Tiered Systems of Support Early Reading. We're really excited to share the work we've been engaged in and to support our districts in establishing, scaling, and sustaining their work with NJTSSER through the use of concrete resources we're about to share with you. So I'm Jen Bender, and I'm joined today with Cynthia Makowitz. She's a colleague and fellow consultant and also the project manager on our grant. Okay, so our agenda for today begins with a description of who we are and what we do, followed by a brief overview of the NJTSSER framework and the resources available to all districts to support its implementation, a description of district leadership roles and the roadmap districts would follow to implement the framework over time, and finally, a brief walkthrough of the NJTSSER website before our Q&A.
Jen, did you want to try a different view?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I think the sharing is showing your
Oh, whoops.
not in presentation mode, I guess you could call it.
Right.
So.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that. Let me see. I wonder why. I'm going to stop sharing and try again. Let's try this again. Okay. Can you see it now in presentation mode?
It's perfect now.
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. You can actually, whoops. What happened there? Okay. Can you see that now?
Yes, presentation mode. Thanks, Jen.
Okay, no problem. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, so who are we? We are NJTSSER, and it's a New Jersey Department of Education, Rutgers University collaboration that supports districts in improving knowledge and practices pertaining to NJTSS early reading, building and sustaining a multi-tiered database decision-making system that increases early reading proficiency for K-3 students and increasing NJTSSER implementation fidelity. So the focus of this grant is to really help districts build capacity to do this work independent of the support of NJTSSER state consultants like myself and Cynthia, and that they can sustain this work across years and personnel changes and allow for scalability across districts throughout New Jersey. So let's begin with an overview of our NJTSSER framework. This framework outlines essential knowledge and implementation components required to effectively integrate NJTSSER into schools. NJTSS builds on current intervention and referral services and calls for the coordination of all supports and interventions across schools and districts to target the educational needs of students. This is an overview of our NJTSS early reading framework, and it's comprised of the key foundational knowledge and essential components needed to effectively implement an NJTSS approach, again, focused on improving students' early reading proficiency. To inform decisions, foundational knowledge is really needed in 3 areas: team-based early prevention model, assessments and database decision-making, and research-based priority early reading skills. And this foundational knowledge is an important prerequisite so that districts can effectively implement practices and procedures for universal screening, diagnostics, and progress monitoring, as well as implementing and monitoring instructional supports across all tiers of instruction. So the yellow, green, and blue lozenges outlined here are the main components that comprise our NJTSS-ER framework. The full integration of all the components that we just talked through results in a continuous cycle of data-informed instructional decision-making. An essential first step is to collect data on the early reading proficiency of all kindergarten through 3rd grade students through the administration of universal screening. Universal screening data are then used to determine the extent to which core reading instruction is enabling students to meet benchmark expectations, and to identify which students may benefit from additional intervention supports to close those skill gaps. In Tier 1, ongoing curriculum embedded assessment data are collected and analyzed in order to inform differentiation and any adjustment to core needs. Tier 1 implementation is also important to ensure instruction is being delivered with fidelity. And for students who did not reach benchmark expectations on universal screening early reading indicators, diagnostic skill inventories are administered to determine which specific skills to target for intervention. And with this data, interventions are planned and implemented. Ongoing progress monitoring assessments are administered to determine student progress towards goals and the effectiveness of the intervention. The implementation of tiers 2 and 3 is also monitored to ensure instruction is being delivered with fidelity. So how do we assist New Jersey school districts in integrating those components that we just reviewed? So districts integrate each component in 5 stages. Prepare, stage 1, establish, stage 2, install, stage 3, implement, stage 4, and evaluate and refine, stage 5. So these 5 stages repeat for each component. Here you see an example of a universal screening action plan, universal screening being which is one of our components that drives the work districts do to integrate universal screening. There are full action plans organized into these 5 stages for each component, but for demonstration purposes today, we will use the universal screening component as a model. In stage 1, districts would prepare. They preview the implementation steps for that component as outlined in the action plan, and they build knowledge. Districts build this knowledge by taking an interactive online course to deepen their understanding of that component. So in this case, they'd be taking a course on universal screening to understand their knowledge of, or to, I guess, deepen their knowledge of universal screening. In stage 2, districts appraise existing school practices. They select resources and tools, and they establish their district guidelines. In stage 3, districts install that essential component, they schedule implementation, and they prepare for implementation monitoring. In stage 4, districts implement the essential component as well as engage in database decision-making aligned to district guidelines and plans. And finally, in stage 5, districts evaluate the effectiveness of the implementation and make refinements as needed. So within each action plan are meeting protocols identified at point of use. These meeting protocols are a unique feature of our framework that promotes sustainability because these meeting protocols are used by local school district leadership teams to accomplish key actions outlined in each action plan. They provide step-by-step procedures for facilitating meetings and memorializing the work that they're doing to integrate that component. The meeting protocols also provide links to protocols, tools, and online learning courses to help districts operationalize their implementation of each component. So because we know that locally led implementation of NJTSS-ER promotes long-term sustainability of systems change, district leadership teams play a critical role in effective NJTSS-ER implementation. And in order for districts to really be effective in implementing this work, it's important that districts identify who in their district team is responsible for facilitating this work. So we have outlined 3 primary early reading leadership team roles that have been established in NJTS SER that would then be established in New Jersey school districts: a systems change leader, an NJTS SER facilitator, and content experts. So it's the function of these roles more so than the titles of the personnel that are essential to the effective action planning, capacity building, and integration of the framework. Individuals may be positioned to be assigned to different roles at different times, depending on their level of authority, capacity, and expertise, and also which component they're currently working on integrating. So for example, an English language arts supervisor may serve as a systems change leader, an NJTS SER facilitator, and/or as a content expert. So team building is dependent on district resources such as personnel and time. It does take time to appropriately integrate each essential component of NJTS SER into schools. So within multiple phases, district leadership team members engage in a staged approach to integrating these NJTS SER components into their schools. NJTS SER is designed to be integrated in phases, which prioritizes an order for introducing component stages of NJTS SER. So the work in each phase is completed before they move on to the next. And once they're all integrated, these stages would repeat as part of data-guided implementation. This roadmap and the accompanying resources and supports really provides districts with guidance in building a robust system over time to improve the early reading achievement of all students in their district. So we have an NJTS SER website that's available to all New Jersey school districts to access our NJTS SER framework resources that we just talked through. We provide the framework resources to our cohort districts receiving level 3 consultative supports. Capacity building resources aligned to the NJTS SER framework are available to all New Jersey school districts through accessing them on our website, which is this address right here. And I'm going to go to it right now. Okay, I'm just checking. Can you guys see that it's changed? Yeah, okay. All right, so I'm looking at the time. Okay, great. And so this is our NJTS SER website. And we just want to point out a couple important pieces of this today. I know we're getting up on time. But right here is the quick links to our NJTS SER framework resources. I'll click on it in a minute. Training opportunities in our resource library. So I'll hover over this one because we want to focus on this one today. Here is our NJTS SER framework. When you hover over it, there's 2 options. The first is an explanation of our systemic approach. So when you click on that, here it has a summary of that approach that we just talked about. And then there is just brief video overviews that talk about those components. So here's one for foundational knowledge and the importance of that and what's needed for districts. And then our essential components are here as well. So brief, just quick video overview of those components in our framework. And then an overview of what it entails in terms of integrating it through the use of our multi-phase staged approach. So that's the first link that you're seeing here. When you go down here, the planning and implementation resources is where you're going to find all of the resources that we just talked about in the presentation. So here, this page begins with a user guide, which is downloadable. If you click on that, you can open it up in Google Docs, and it just talks about, again, that systemic approach, understanding how this is all organized, the stages, the roadmap, and then just an overview of how these planning and implementation resources are named and how they're organized. So that's for understanding all that. And then when you scroll down, this is where you will see across the top in tabs, each of those components that we talked about. And then all of the resources can be found here. So let's click on universal screening since that was our model. And right here is a link to an overview, which is just districts get access to it by taking that online learning course. They can download it there, but they can also access it here, which really gives you the foundational knowledge needed for that component, in this case, universal screening. And then down here, districts can click on the action plan, which serves as their roadmap. and can access all of the protocols and all of the materials that are needed and are referenced in this action plan. So we'll open that up. It does make you make a forced copy of it, and then you'd save that. So that's universal screening, and everything that's referenced in here would be linked all down here, and they can access it that way. And so that would repeat for all of the other components that we have listed here in our framework page. And then just a quick, since we only have very few people on here, training opportunities are in this tab. We actually have our level 3 intensive coaching application due very soon, as well as access to those online learning courses. So districts can click right on here and they're take them, right? They can log on, sign in, they're self-paced, they're asynchronous, so they take them independently, and then they get a certificate at the end of it. Down here, and then our resource library, of course, is another place for districts to be able to come and find resources and sort and filter as needed up here.
Jen, maybe go back to the training and just talk a little bit more about that application that's due. The fact that we're opened up for a new grant to bring on districts in a level 3 capacity.
Sure. So here, in terms of our levels of training, right? Level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1 is open access to everybody. Level 2 is what we're working on, having the capacity to be able to share some of this with other districts through webinars. Level 3 is what, as Cynthia mentioned, what's due soon. It's really intensive coaching from state level coaches. And when you click here, this takes you to our application that is due February 17th. For New Jersey school districts, it's open to apply. It has all the criteria on here. And we do encourage that districts view the video overview. This registration has passed. This was back in the 25th, but I believe, no, yeah, it has already passed. I think we're trying to put up the video at some point soon, but definitely view the video overview that describes our process and what the requirements are. And then you can access the application either through a Google Doc and completing it that way. Make sure you make a forced copy. Or if you prefer, you can download it as a Microsoft Word document, and that'll open up here.
Thank you.
And that's our plug for our for you to apply for the grant. If you're a New Jersey school district, we encourage you to apply.
It's actually really helpful that you're.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say it's helpful that you share that, because as a SPDIG project officer of various grants, they sometimes ask me, you know, who has other applications that they could look at and share, even though they know it's all different. And especially surrounded around reading seems to be, you know, reading and MTSS around our common themes. So yeah. Even myself, I'm like able to share this with some individual SPDIG grants that have been asking me.
Yeah, it's open to this. This will be our 5th cohort of districts that we will be working with. The difference in the cohort 4 and the upcoming cohort 5 is that, as Jen explained, we're really looking at creating sustainability and really independence within a district for building capacity and their MTSS system. So that's why the protocols are so finely crafted, so that, you know, we give them the modeling, we give them the explanation, and then they're ready to go back to the district and implement it on their own. Note-taking, memorializing, and decision-making really happens in their court, but then we follow up with consultative check-ins to help to problem solve and see how they're doing. So it's a pretty structured framework to help them autonomize what they're doing in the district.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that you also have all of the resources available for them, like you said, to autonomize them, or even if they aren't going to be a part of your cohort, they have these resources if they wanted to start. So when you think about, you know, spread, right? So it's nice that they're able to access it.
Yeah, not all districts we have a really heavy focus on tier 1 instruction. So that's why on the roadmap, when you see the phases, we're really looking at one, it's tier 1 instruction, but it's based on data. So if you have acquired your universal screening data with an effective tool, then you can see where your difficulties lie. And then when you're looking at tier 1 instruction, we have tools to help you analyze your core so that you can actually make decisions based on data. And those areas have already been identified. And more may pop up while you do that core analysis. So we really want to, many districts we find are so ready to jump into tier 2, tier 3, of course, because they see the need. But we spend a lot of time up front, impressing upon them that the time really needs to be spent at tier 1, so you don't have such an overflow of tier 2, tier 3 needs in a year or two, let's say.
Yeah, it's very, very true. Very true. Need to have that core instruction going on.
Yeah. And part of the webinar that we just had with those districts that are receiving cohort 3, which is what any new applicant would be applying for, not cohort 3, level 3, was we actually had our districts in breakout rooms with their own district leadership team, looking at bringing their data to the meeting and then analyzing that data so that, and we walk them through the protocol. They're doing the protocol right there. So they're ready when they go back to continue the work. And then they're prepared for the next webinar, which is next week, to actually bring their completed data to that meeting. And now, what do you have to do to prepare to analyze this work? So it's pretty structured on our end so that they really have a roadmap, using the roadmap to follow to do this implementation work.
Yeah, that roadmap tool is definitely something, it's like a concrete thing to walk with to really recognize what to do. I like that. I like that you guys have really laid things out visually also. And what's interesting is when you're thinking about messaging and stuff, your website having like a webinar, having like, I mean, not webinar, like a video recording, and like all these different ways for people to open up. Word versus Google and stuff even is something very different, but available for them. That's nice.
Thank you.
So any other last thoughts or questions? Not sure anybody has. Well, actually, one other question I have, just general, especially as people are recording, seeing a recording of this, what might be the best way if they wanted to learn more about it? So they have the link to the website, which I think if I put it in the chat, I don't think that share. Yeah, I was going to say it should better that way.
Yeah.
And then, what would be if they wanted to learn more or reach out, to maybe get some, I mean, it's great. Your tools are there. They can download it. But if they wanted to ask you questions and things like that, is there suggestions?
Yes, we actually have a contact us. Can you still see my screen? Okay.
Yeah. So NJTSS dash, is that OR or ER?
It's ER.
ER. Okay. Well, when they go to the website, they'll be able to just click it and send you an email. So
So scroll down to contact us, but definitely start at the website. I would say if they want to learn more about it, to absolutely go to Systemic Approach, because I think that the videos and just the overview of these components here will give you a lot of information as to what it is that we're really trying to help districts integrate. This would be a lot of information from here moving to implementation resources. And then if there are any other questions, right here.
Have you found that by having this great resource for solicit applications, I guess you could call it, of your cohorts or your schools and districts that you work with, have you found it relatively, again, recording live right now, but how have you found that success of, because you have these great resources, are you finding that their feedback from them, it's useful, like you're getting a lot of applicants? What kind of lessons learned might you have for people who are starting out?
I would say our cohort 4, which is the cohort that we're working with in this way, with the framework and all of these tools and resources, is relatively new to this process. They were onboarded, before the summer. And, they spent the summer building knowledge in those first 3 foundational knowledge areas that Jen pointed out. And we are, as according to the roadmap and also a timeline, what's not showcased here is we break out the implementation of all of these components over 3 years. So we give enough time for them to do the work in terms of establishing and implementing. So the first year is really but building knowledge and then getting universal screening solidified so that they have the tools that they need and the data that they need. And now we're moving into tier 1. And that's this year. So when I said earlier that we really put an emphasis on strengthening that tier 1 core, particularly for the word recognition and word analysis and word recognition portion of ELA, because that's where we're finding the most need for these children. I would say that the initial feedback is positive in that districts really like having a structure to the meetings. They really like knowing what has to happen now and what is coming next. And it's motivating to have that timeline because they're somewhat forced into making sure that, you know, that they're keeping pace to the degree that they can. But they have everything at their fingertips and everything is linked from the action plan. So it's been well received.
Yeah, it's like, go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, I'll just add to that I think another piece that they really appreciate is the knowledge building component that's sort of baked into integration. So at the start of every component, right, it's guided by action plans. So the action plan acts as their sort of internal roadmap as they work to integrate key actions within that component. Before they do any of that, they're building knowledge for that component. So they're not going into it blind, right? They're taking those online learning courses first, and then thinking about their own capacity to do that work before they actually engage in starting to move through all the other stages, right? So that's been really positive, that we've gotten a lot of good feedback on in terms of that knowledge building piece.
Yeah.
That's great. And having that feedback helps to inform the work moving forward too along the way, or how to
Absolutely. We are always looking for that feedback through surveys, through conversation, every step of the way. Yes.
That's great. Well, thank you very much. I could
Oh,
see
you're
that there are a lot. Sorry, were you about to say something?
No, well, I was just going to say what Jen brought up about the building foundational knowledge. That's a really critical component. The leadership teams have been very focused on doing that work. And then the next step is for them to push that knowledge out to the practitioners in the classroom, because one very important piece of that is to build a common philosophy and a common knowledge, common vocabulary, common everything, so that when changes start to happen, the practitioners understand and appreciate why these changes are happening. So that's an important piece.
Yeah, that's great. And, you know, everybody comes in at different levels. And so helping to build collective knowledge is also an essential piece to move forward.
Very good. Good word.
Well, thank you guys very much. I could probably ask a lot of other questions about your project, but I think I would like to really dive into your website first and follow up with you. So
we'd like to hear back from you.
yes. I do support a bunch of other SPDIG projects. So I'm always looking again for collective sharing from learning from one another. So I will be happy to send along the information too to them. So yeah, thank you again very much for everything then. And I mean, unless there's any other thoughts or questions, we can end today's session and see you guys in tomorrow's. I think it's a whole group to start with. So 11 o'clock Eastern time.